In short, I am in a relationship. I fell in love with another man, and he fell in love with me. But to leave the already established relationship for some reason, I am very anxious. I cannot. Is there an objective reason for this? I am 28 years old. For a short time I was married. Husband very pressurized me in terms of sex. I, because of this, became constantly ill, and my feelings for him quickly passed. We broke up on my initiative, but in general he also shared this desire, as I realized. As if there was no joy, pleasure in our communication. After this unsuccessful relationship, in my new relationship with Steve, also had problems with sex. I was nervous, afraid. I made some attempts to solve this issue, but every time I ran into some kind of internal block. In the beginning it caused conflicts, but apparently Steve got too attached to me and couldn't break up with me when he realized it was a real problem. Apart from sex problems, it was quite a warm relationship. We talked a lot. We spent all our free time together. We had mutual friends. Steve introduced me to his parents. At first I felt happy, but soon Steve began to have health problems because of his field of activity, and I, feeling sorry for him, provided all possible help, sitting with him almost as a caregiver. At first I thought that this difficult situation brought us together, and in general it did, but I assumed it was just temporary. After a while, it became clear that Steve had to choose between changing his field of activity and being healthy, or doing endless surgeries. At first, he chose the first option, which made him depressed and lethargic for a long time, after which he decided to come back and continue doing surgeries. When I realized that no solution to this problem was in sight, I became sad and a little sad. Steve, on the other hand, started talking about getting married. He'd been suggesting moving in together for a long time, but I'd been hesitant. I had mixed feelings. On the one hand, I loved him. On the other hand, the problems with sex prevented me from taking any steps forward. Feeling discouraged, I decided to turn my attention to my resources. I didn't like working in my specialty and decided to change my field to the one I had always dreamed of. This decision was given to me with difficulty. I doubted that I will succeed because of the fact that I have no specialized education. After finishing the course, I began to make the first attempts and did not regret my decision. My eyes were burning and I was thrilled that I was somewhere to take pictures. Since I realized that I lacked qualifications, I worked hard. On one of the shoots, I met Albert, who is a producer. I immediately felt sympathy for him. I could see that he was very energetic and confident. I remember thinking how cool it is that I am surrounded by such people. During the shoot, we smiled at each other a couple times. This is usually a normal part of the filming process, so when he came up to me after the shoot, I was very surprised. Albert offered me to collaborate on another of his projects. Of course, I happily agreed and left my contact. Already in the evening, Albert wrote to me and scheduled a meeting for the next day to discuss the details. Going to the meeting, I was very worried about appearing unprofessional. Usually I dress very feminine, but this time I decided to dress more strictly. At the meeting itself, the dialogue was very easy. We were chatting about everything, and at some point I realized that we did not discuss work issues at all. So, just in case, I decided to mention in passing that I had a boyfriend. It seemed to me at the time that Albert was a little disappointed and soon went home. Much later he confirmed that this was generally the case, but I was not sure of my guess at the time. However, when saying goodbye, he once again repeated his offer to film with him, and once again I happily accepted. Of course, I was thrilled with him after this meeting, but I assumed it wasn't mutual. Even if he initially liked me a little, having a boyfriend must have repulsed him. I couldn't get my mind off of him, so I actively switched to my new job. I didn't remind him of myself. I didn't think it was appropriate. About a week later, Albert invited me to the project we were discussing. The shoot was a lot of fun. We had a good time. Albert's friend from the crew tried to invite me out. I thanked him and refused, citing a boyfriend. Albert seemed to be happy too, and right on the set, he asked me to do another one of his projects. Later, he posted a photo of me on social network. The day after the shoot, Albert called the whole crew to the bar, but I got sick and decided to stay home. I told him that I was sorry I couldn't make it. We started a dialogue and chatted for a few hours. After that, we began to communicate. We constantly corresponded. Gradually, the topics became more and more personal. I liked communicating with him very much. I felt very grateful to him for the opportunities and gradually fell in love, but there was no romantic context in our correspondence. One day we were texting again for hours on end, and he asked me to meet for a walk. I realized that this could be a problem for my relationship, but I also realized that I was in love, and if I refused, I would be tormented and regretful. At the meeting, we were chatting and Albert tried to kiss me, but I turned away. It was unexpected for me, because before that I had concluded that we had a friendly communication. There was no hint from his side. I concluded that I looked in love. I guess I should have explained then that I like him, but I have a boyfriend. However, he seemed to realize it anyway, because our communication continued. I starred in another of his projects. Right around this time, my boyfriend started talking about getting married. I got booted off of that because it kind of required me to take steps, but I wasn't sure what to do. I found myself at a crossroads. Albert noticed my bad mood and asked if I was okay. I said I was in some kind of crisis right now. One day, suddenly the conversation turned to open topics, and Albert wrote that he fell in love with me, and it seems to him that he has never fallen in love so much, and I hinted that it was mutual. I was afraid to say openly, so as not to humiliate my boyfriend. He wrote that he was very happy and immediately proposed a meeting. I agreed. This meeting was already more like a date. It was very romantic. We walked in the rain, went to museums. Albert kept hugging me and touching me casually, but he didn't try to kiss me again. We met a few more times in this format. I fell in love more and more, but when we kissed for the first time, I didn't feel any excitement, but only guilt. The next day I was a wreck. Such an oddity with me. But I didn't have the guts to end my relationship with Albert or my boyfriend. We kissed very passionately for a while, and it was clearly going to be sex. I was worried about it. Albert obviously noticed this and voiced that he was ready to wait as long as I needed. I was embarrassed and didn't say anything. We ended up making an unsuccessful attempt to have sex, but it didn't work because I was anxious and in pain. I decided that with him this problem would continue, and I fell into a kind of melancholy. However, from his stories before, I concluded that sex was very important to him. So, it seemed to me that in this case, I would only disappoint him, and I emotionally suggested that he just stay friends. Here it is necessary to explain that also from our conversations with him, I concluded that he had a lot of some non-serious novels, so I assumed that his attitude to me is about the same as to other girls, i.e. a slight sympathy. But Albert reacted very negatively. He started saying that he didn't expect that from me and that everything between us, I decided to reduce it to just sex, and he was disappointed with my conclusions. He decided to send me home in a cab. He usually drove me home himself. What happened next was a bit of a fuss. I realized that I had made a mistake by underestimating his feelings, but I didn't understand how to fix the situation in the moment. I refused to get in a cab until we talked, which ended up being stupid because I didn't know what to say. He spoke again. He said that I was acting like a child, and he thought that by agreeing to have sex, I had made a decision to be with him. Again, he repeated that he had never fallen in love so much, but what I have in my head, he does not understand. I replied that I was in love too. That's why I was acting stupid. He replied that yes, I fell in love, but in the end, I still chose my boyfriend. I decided that with him this problem would continue, and I fell into a kind of melancholy. However, from his stories before, I concluded that sex was very important to him. So, it seemed to me that in this case, I would only disappoint him, and I emotionally suggested that he just stay friends. Here it is necessary to explain that also from our conversations with him, I concluded that he had a lot of some non-serious novels, so I assumed that his attitude to me is about the same as to other girls, i.e. a slight sympathy. But Albert reacted very negatively. He started saying that he didn't expect that from me and that everything between us, I decided to reduce it to just sex, and he was disappointed with my conclusions. He decided to send me home in a cab. He usually drove me home himself. What happened next was a bit of a fuss. I realized that I had made a mistake by underestimating his feelings, but I didn't understand how to fix the situation in the moment. I refused to get in a cab until we talked, which ended up being stupid because I didn't know what to say. He spoke again. He said that I was acting like a child, and he thought that by agreeing to have sex, I had made a decision to be with him. Again, he repeated that he had never fallen in love so much, but what I have in my head, he does not understand. I replied that I was in love too. That's why I was acting stupid. He replied that yes, I fell in love, but in the end, I still chose my boyfriend. I said I didn't say that. He said he was tired of waiting. The situation had been dragging on for 3 months, and I had plenty of time to decide everything, and that I had one last chance to say something to him. But I went into a sort of stupor. He realized I wasn't going to say anything sane anymore and left. Maybe he was making the right move by telling me that sex is not the main thing. He sees that I have a problem with it. Besides, I feel guilty in front of the guy. The next day I was in pain. At first I thought I should try to get away from him thanks to this situation, but I quickly realized that I shouldn't. A day later I texted him. In the message I wrote that I was really just afraid that I would not satisfy him in terms of sex. He responded literally in a second. We had a frank conversation, and he wrote that he was very happy that everything turned out this way because he was very afraid of losing me, but he was not ready to be friends with me. That was our last meeting before I left, and when I came back, Albert met me and we had some amazing sex. After that, I felt a huge load of guilt again. I didn't break up with my boyfriend, but I was drifting further and further away from him. He started having health problems again and had several emergency surgeries. I felt like he was in a very bad state and needed to wait until he recovered to break up with him, otherwise it would be a real setup on my part. He is sick and constantly said that why I need him. So sick, and I'd better find someone healthy. It made me even more upset. I saw him about once a week so that I would not leave him, as I thought, in a difficult moment. Most of the time we went to the doctors together. Albert was angry about it, but I tried to explain my motivation, and he said he respected my decision, even though he didn't understand. In addition, I told him that our relationship with my boyfriend was never passionate from the beginning and normal sex turned out only with him, with Albert. After that, it seemed to me that Albert finally calmed down. I saw Albert every day. He insisted that I stay overnight, and after a while he gave me the keys to his apartment. When I stayed with him, I cooked meals and tried to be useful in the household. Once during sex he said that he loved me. I thought it was not thought out, in a fit of passion, but then he repeated it several times and in a calm state. I couldn't leave my boyfriend, and Albert would like that. He asked how long he should wait, and I said a couple of months for him to recover. After the operation, I also said that I had hesitated for a long time because I wasn't sure if Albert was serious. It was true. He had never explicitly asked me to break up with my boyfriend, and it even bothered me. But he didn't seem to believe me and replied that it was already obvious that he was hurt by the whole situation. Albert ended up making me promise not to spend the night at the guy's house. To be honest, I was glad that Albert had claimed some rights over me. I thought it should have been easy for me to break up with the sick guy, but it wasn't. Another month has passed since that conversation. Albert involves me in all his projects, introduces me to his friends, invited me to a film festival in another city where his work took place, suggested that we move in together when the issue with his boyfriend's illness is solved. And he constantly repeats that he wants to live with me for the rest of his life. Suggests we get a dog together. I feel like I want all that with him too. But for some reason, I still see the future with him as somehow unreliable. I realize that I'm skipping steps, but for some reason, I'm still very anxious to part with a sick loved one because we were strongly integrated in each other's lives, and with Albert the First still feel like we're a little bit from different operas. I know for a fact that my boyfriend notices sometimes that I text with Albert. Also, we see each other very rarely, but he doesn't initiate any fights, even though he has indicated that he wants to see each other more often, so he doesn't care in general. I guess it would be all right if we broke up. But when I even imagine that it will have to be done, my heart aches. I'm still very attached to him and grateful for a lot of things. I think I will miss him a lot, his friends that we already have in common. We have been together for 3 years and have been through a lot together. I even feel like when I purposely try not to be especially affectionate to someone who is sick so that it will be less painful to say goodbye. Besides, I feel very sorry for him. I feel guilty. Because of this, I am often sad when I am with Albert. I don't understand. Do I have any feelings left? Or is it pity? I'm afraid to make the wrong decision and a lifetime of regret because it's silly to compare the relationship in the beginning and the relationship in 3 years. I'm trying to talk myself out of the old life. But apparently, there is a lot of pity left and there is uncertainty about the future. I cannot yet fully trust Albert. I really want to,